And now,
it's 10 a.m.
Let's just get down to it.
And it's time for your sports fix.
Strap yourselves in, folks.
From two guys who have covered the teams you're passionate about for years.
We are professionals.
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5 The KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott, Ben Anderson. Thank you for making us a part of your Thursday, I think. What's up, Ben?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I have to do one thing right off the top of the show,
Okay.
and that's say that my 3-year-old Maggie is not feeling well today. She is sick. The reason I have to do that is because I was driving. No, I wasn't even driving. Oh, yes, I was. I was driving her home from my parents' house because she wasn't feeling well yesterday, and she said, "Dad, did you talk about me on the radio?" And I said, no, honey, I didn't talk about you on the radio today. And she goes, "Will you talk about me on the radio
feel better.
and talk about me being sick?" And I just said, "Okay."
Sure thing.
And then this morning, on my way out the door, I got the reminder, "Dad, you said you'd talk about me on the radio today about me being sick."
Well, shout out to the little lady.
And I said, "Okay, honey, I will do that."
And she knows when you're talking about her? Do you think if she heard?
No, she doesn't know.
If she was listening, would she know that you were talking about her right now?
Oh, yeah, if she were listening.
Okay.
She would. But yeah, I don't know what, it's not like she sits around listening to the show all the time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But like, I don't know what clicked in her brain yesterday that I don't know, that our listeners really needed to know she was not feeling well.
Yeah.
That our great audience needed to be made aware that she's not feeling well.
What you can do when you get home, you can pull up the Jake and Ben show wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah.
And replay it for her.
I'll do just that.
Yeah. Then she'll think it's live. My daughter asked me, because sometimes, road games, I'll work a Jazz game from home or whatever. Every night she says, "Is this game live?" Like, yeah. Now, she actually has a good reason for asking this, is that pre-draft, I go back and rewatch a lot of college basketball. And that's when she's home for the summer, So I'm watching games at 11, or I guess right after our show, 12:30 p.m., and doing write-ups and whatever. And that makes sense to her. She'll ask, like, "Is this game live?" And I'll say, "No, I can pause it. I can go make you food. I can do whatever you need. We can stop it. We can go do something." Harder to do that during a live Jazz game at night. So there is some reasoning there. But yeah, every game she asks me, "Is this going on right now?" Yeah, every time.
It is.
Yeah.
Correct.
This is in our town, going on live.
That is funny.
Yeah. Anyways, neither here nor there.
How things have changed. Do you remember, Christian will not identify with this at all, but my dad and I are sports fans or whatever, so we would put in the blank VCR tape and then somehow figure out on the VCR how to set it when to record. Do you remember what a horribly complicated process that was?
Do you remember?
And it only worked a fraction of the time?
Yeah, sometimes you had to wire your antenna through your VCR, and you had to hope that you were recording it from there. You know what I mean? Like, just because you could watch your TV through a VCR doesn't mean it was actually what was going through the VCR. So you could record, and you would go home to watch something, and it was black.
Right. Nothing.
And it was just like, I missed it.
Huh?
I missed all of this.
And
nothing comes back on again.
And you would threaten to beat people up the whole night if they told you what was happening in the game, which was actually a realistic thing then because nobody had smartphones where they could just like follow the score second to second or whatever. Like if you had to go to a dinner
Whatever,
or
movie,
or a movie or something like that, you didn't have bozos be like, "Hey, check it out."
Yeah.
But the feeling of getting home and you point this out beautifully and something didn't work was the most soul-crushing thing.
Frustrating. Really
ever.
frustrating.
I mean, you get home and it's like, "Oh, I've got bad news. We programmed it for PM or AM instead of PM or something like that." Like something silly because it took a whole manual to figure out how to program it and you do it wrong or whatever, or the tape didn't.
It ate the tape.
Yeah, whatever.
VCR eating the tape was always.
And then your soul is just crushed.
Yeah, it was tough.
I had poured all my hopeful energy into this moment where we'd push play. Nothing. Now you just get it on the Snap Talk or YouTube
Whatever
or
you want.
I mean,
Yeah.
even TiVo's like getting not necessary.
Right.
And we haven't called it TiVo in like 15 years.
Right. And things are on the cloud now. You used to have to save hard drive space, delete things. No.
And do you remember how bad the first editions of like TiVo were? Like, it was amazing because you're recording television. You're just like, this is the most incredible thing ever. But you look back on it, it's like recorded like 4 shows.
Yeah.
They were barely watchable. There were so many like skips and like, but it was amazing.
We're moving quick. Thank goodness. Call the Dish Pros.
Oh man, I mean, actually, Ryan and the Dish Pros is like a terrific example of how they've honestly gone along with the technology, and it's like what I say that Ryan can make things simple for you. We actually can, because it's pretty complicated out there, and they've been up with it all along. Anywho, should we complain about streaming? Do you want to start with, I teased it yesterday, a hot take about the Utes, or you want to hit the uninteresting Jazz game?
We can go with the Utes. I'm curious.
Okay, so
Which direction you would go?
So we're talking about what we think or who we think the Utes should hire. The reporting basically on that story is there have been conversations. It seems pretty optimistic. You can follow Bartle for all the latest that Alex Jensen looks to be who they're focusing on. So of course, as soon as a hire is made, we will have it for you at KSLSports.com. Yeah. But I'll tell you what I think they should do, Ben, which they're never going to do.
Okay.
And this is my actual opinion is I think they should hire Randy Bennett. I really do.
Okay.
Like great established coach who's used to overachieving with little resources. And it kind of leads into my somewhat joking opinion. I think they should hire Jeff Bzdelik.
Okay.
Jeff
Get busy.
Bzdelik.
Bzdelik?
Now, he is quite old. He's like, I think he's 71 or something along those lines. He is still coaching. He's on an assistant staff. I don't have it in front of me.
He's 72 years old.
He's on an assistant staff in like New Orleans or something like that. He is still coaching. NBA experience, which is all the fad these days.
Yeah, sure.
But do you remember him when he coached in college, specifically at Air Force?
I remember Wake Forest a little bit. Am I right? He finished at Wake Forest in college before he went to the NBA. But yes, I mean, I remember him as a college coach. I do.
His Air Force teams played Princeton style.
Uh-huh.
They were very mean.
Yeah, a lot of fouls.
Yeah.
I mean, Air Force style.
Right. Very, very mean. I think, honestly, and here's my serious opinion, I think Ute basketball might need a gimmick.
Okay.
And I think the slow it down, Tony Bennett on Jeff Bzdelik at Air Force.
Sure.
Where I think that might be the key. And here's my speculation. You know how you prevent transfers? Nobody gets any stats.
Yeah, nobody has numbers.
So nobody's coming to pluck your players, because all your players scored 9 points a game. You're scoring 39 points a game as a team. And it actually kind of leans in a weird way as well to the Majerus era, where you really guard, you recruit under-recruited guys that you can get the most out of. You know, Utah could still recruit your players that you project into the future that maybe don't have the value now. And if you can get them to stick around and get old and stay old, as they say, I think that's Utah's best edge in the Big 12 specifically. So I say this kind of joking, but I think they need to find a style or an identity that isn't like, they're never going to get better players than Kansas.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
They should never be in the top half of the Big 12, in all honesty, when it comes to recruiting.
They're never going to get better players than some of these teams. Or at least higher profile recruits. And people can scream, and this is where I was pushing back on you a little bit yesterday when you described the triangle of money, support, winning, and what comes
needs
first.
To come first. Yeah.
Well, you got to find a way to do it without money, because you're not. I mean, it's like Utah's back in the Mountain West in some weird ways, where you're just not going to have more resources than a lot of your competition, specifically with basketball, because you're now a football school, and basketball is taking a backseat. And I don't see that changing. Maybe people could see that changing, hiring, an old guard guy, but how much is that really going to change? I don't think they're going to have more money than BYU ever.
No, they're not. Barring something dramatic happen.
Why is everybody screaming about, well, they just need so many more resources? They're going to have to think of a different way to do it. And I get it that they've been kind of bragging about their more resources for the last 10 whatever years, and I've gotten used to waving that Pac-12 money around while BYU's, wandering around in independence. But the rules of the game have entirely changed. And the rules of the game don't necessarily benefit Utah basketball. They just don't. I don't see that dramatically changing. So go find a coach who's going to create an identity where you can actually win. And you know how Tony Bennett won at UVA in the ACC? He slowed every game down to a crawl.
Yeah,
His
pretty hard to watch.
All guarded. Pretty hard to watch.
Yeah.
But that's not that far away from what Rick Majerus' identity was.
No, it's pretty amazing, actually. I think just Virginia is an interesting team to bring up because if you go back historically through their recruiting, they don't have 5-star kids. Tony Bennett did not get 5-star kids. They get maybe 1 or 2 4-star kids, which 4-star kids in basketball are a dime a dozen. There are a lot of 4-star basketball players. It's a lot of 3-star kids, not highly touted. And who's he recruiting against in the ACC? Just everybody? Just everybody else that matters in college basketball? Duke, North Carolina, Wake Forest gets good players. So, yeah, he was never getting top 4 or 5 classes in the ACC and was winning at a level that competed with all of them. And a lot of people would say, well, that's the conference. Well, the conference helps, and Utah's in a good conference as well. But, yes, they had such a strong identity, and the players hung around that they were able to stay competitive year in and year out. It's an interesting topic. It's an interesting point.
So, yeah, I mean, you can get the NBA guy and try and do an NBA model and coach an NBA style and talk about big recruits and their dreams of playing in the NBA, and we're going to give you zillions of dollars. Like, I don't think that's going to be possible for them. I don't know. Maybe that's not true. Maybe there's some zillionaire owner who's listening to the show right now who's going to call in and say, no, I'll give them everything they want. But I don't see that. Now, I'll buy into some of those donors haven't been enthusiastic about donating to Craig. And so maybe there's a little bit of more juice to squeeze. But I got to think the majority of the NIL focus at Utah is always going to be on the football team.
I agree. I don't think you can build a basketball team with no money. You can't do it with zero funds. I think...
Sure you can. Air Force is playing basketball.
People might think you have to have $40 million to build a college basketball team, and I don't think that's accurate either. To your point, I don't think... Virginia has donors, and Virginia's paying their basketball players, I'm sure, but it is not doing what BYU's doing.
Well, it is now. It wasn't when Tony Bennett was doing his thing. UVA, the rules might have changed in their favor, too. There's a lot of dough that comes through UVA, so maybe they change now that Tony's gone.
But they're not paying what Duke is paying. They're not paying what North Carolina's paying. So if Utah is constantly facing an uphill battle, which truthfully they probably are in the Big 12 when it comes to Kansas and now BYU and Baylor and Texas Tech and all these schools that are happy to pay their players big sums, you've got to find a way to compete. And having an identity is actually the strongest way to be able to compete.
And you talk about how UVA was unwatchable. Do you think UVA fans cared for 1 second how unwatchable their team was?
Yeah, you know what's great? When your team has a higher score at the end of the game than the other team. Even if it's 44-39.
They didn't care for 2 seconds. That's buying into the concept that college athletes, or a lot of them, always do, that they are the show. That is not true. You are not playing the highest level of football or basketball or whatever. A lot of the interest is not because of the greatness of the players. A lot of the interest is because the passion and connection with the school, which was the whole point in the first place, but people lose touch of that, or lose touch with that. But, yeah, if Utah's rattling off wins, do you think they'd care if they were winning games 45-41?
And if you were to look at Utah this year and how they've been able to exceed expectations despite the fact that they dismissed Craig Smith as their head coach, it's because of their defense. They play a lot of defense. They don't make free throws. They don't shoot threes very well. They shoot a lot of threes. They don't shoot them very well. They play really good defense. They make it hard to score late in games. Ask BYU, ask Kansas, ask Kansas State. They will ugly a game up. They will miss shots. They will get offensive rebounds, and then they make it really hard for you to score. That's how they've won. So you can get good defensive players that are probably under the radar guys that can have success. And you can go back through Virginia. I mean, Ryan Dunn, who plays for the Phoenix Suns now, went to Virginia and ended up as a first-round pick. But, yeah, his numbers are shockingly poor.
Right.
And you're like, what happened? It's like, well, you're not going to rack up big numbers because you're playing at Virginia. And two, you did it with a different identity. You did it with on the defensive side of the ball, which isn't going to command a bunch of money traditionally from other teams that are going to come and poach your guys.
So your big recruits aren't going to go to your school anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the big schools are the big recruits aren't going to your school, and then they're not leaving.
So you can take a bunch of projects. Yeah. You can take under-talented guys that have some pluck or some sort of skill, and they're not going to go anywhere because they're not going to have any stats, and so nobody's going to pay any attention. And you can create an identity. And so I think that's honestly what I would do. And maybe it's not the Princeton style, although I find that pretty intriguing. But they've got to find some sort of identity that's going to make them or help them punch above their weight in the best basketball conference in the country. I mean, we're talking about big time college basketball, and what is going to be their edge, and how are they going to compete?
Yep. Because there's always going to be big-time recruits that go to different schools in the Big 12. Baylor always has a top 10 guy. BYU looks like they're going to be in the competition for top 10 guys. Kansas always has multiple top 10 guys. You've got to figure out how to separate yourself.
Some zillionaire you told me the other day just poured a ton of money into Texas Tech.
Some guy just sold his energy company for $4 billion, and his thing is, I want to be the biggest donor in the country.
Houston has an identity, and
great,
as long as Kelvin Sampson is there, they're going to be good.
Yeah, and they'll get a Jarris Walker occasionally, but they're a bunch of early second-round pick, late first-round point guards who are just dogs on the defensive end. That's just what they are. They're undersized. They don't shoot coming out of high school. You hope they figure out how to shoot by the time they're juniors and seniors, but if not, it's 40 minutes of hell. It's Nolan Richardson going back to Arkansas and how he liked to play basketball. I really think you might be onto something as far as, this identity of attracting money and the money attracting recruits, and you try and get NBA players, et cetera, et cetera. It's nice. You can have those things. I think if that becomes your goal, it can become a bad goal that doesn't necessarily translate to wins. And Utah basketball, more than anything, needs to put wins on the board more than they need to put players in the NBA.
And I think people actually kind of misunderstand, and maybe they don't, but just how concentrated the money is. So, there's some leagues that are playing, and some universities that are paying big time dough. But there's good players in the Big Sky, for example. Just ask Danny Sprinkle.
Yeah.
There's good players that aren't getting anything and are still actually just looking for scholarships and the college experience and all this stuff. I mean, rosters are still limited, meaning in these leagues, we're only talking about hundreds of players. Uh-huh. There are thousands of players that could compete in big-time college basketball that don't require $8 million just to get a look at their transcript or whatever.
Yeah.
You can compete, but you got to find an identity, and then you've got to find the right players. But I don't think, Utah's recipe has been when they get NBA guys, and that's been their recipe, and they've done a good job acquiring or developing or whatever. I don't know if that's the way going forward.
What I do think is appealing about Alex Jensen, and actually feeds into this conversation pretty well, is he has been a bit of a big man whisperer by reputation. How accurate is that? I don't know. We will see. But he was Rudy's coach. He went to Dallas. Derek Lively had a huge breakout year, going from a somewhat unimpressive college career, was only 1 year, to a fantastic rookie player, and it certainly helps to play next to Luka and Kyrie. That makes you a better player. But Alex Jensen was his coach there. Can you attract a big guy who doesn't have to be a superstar. But, I mean, you were talking about the last great Utah team might have featured Luke Neville. I mean, not,
it did feature Jakob Poeltl.
I would say Poeltl was good, and and Kuzma was good, and DeLon Wright. Regardless, Utah has a history of some good big men that probably came in under the radar. Poeltl certainly did. Bogut certainly did. Luke Neville certainly did.
So go back to Doliak.
Right. So can you bring in a big guy, have a coach who really knows how to work with him, and establish a defense around that, and build a defense around that, and can that that be this defensive mindset you have? I think that's intriguing. Whether you get Jeff Bzdelik or not.
I'm calling Jeff, dude.
If you end up with Alex Jensen and that's the identity you go with, that might be the winning combo. He has the numbers in his phone. He has the NBA experience. He was a good G League coach. He coached under Majerus. He's an alumni. He does all those things. But what's going to win on the floor is not that. What's going to win on the floor is the identity of his basketball team.
I'd say we want Air Force Jeff. Now, we don't want NBA Jeff. We want Air Force Jeff. We want
Denver
it to be
Nuggets Jeff, right?
We want it to be ugly.
Get out of here.
Slow, dirty, all of the above.
Yeah.
That's going to be the identity. The early 90s Pistons.
Right. I can see Alex Jensen being a little bit of a tough guy.
Well, that's the thing, is it the Majerus side of Alex Jensen?
Yeah.
How they coached in St. Louis. No, that's why Alex is intriguing. That's what I'm saying. He's
an intriguing name.
He's different than your normal celebrity alumni hire because his resume is really intriguing. It is, for sure. I'd still hire Bzdelik.
Okay. Is Nolan Richardson alive?
Call it Tony Bennett.
Yeah. Tony must not want to leave. Otherwise, he would have left before, right? He's like...
Who? At UVA? He did leave.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm thinking of...
Randy Bennett.
I'm thinking of Randy Bennett. Sorry. Tony Bennett's retired. He's never coming back.
Honestly, I don't know with Randy Bennett. I don't know why he stayed at St. Mary's all that time.
If Randy wanted to leave, I suspect he would have. Because
he's a great coach.
Any player that comes through under his program and gets to the NBA, like every coach will bring up Randy Bennett by name and be like, he's awesome. He's like one of the best coaches.
Well, and if he wanted to leave, he'd probably be on all these lists Bartle's putting out because I can't imagine Utah not being interested if he actually wanted to leave at St. Mary's.
Agreed.
All right, stay tuned. Top 3 stories of the day at KSLSports.com coming up next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Accessing.
This is Hans Olsen and Scotty G.
Ute insider Steve Bartle. Alex Jensen was in the mix when Craig got hired. In fact, I know that he was offered the job and decided to stay put with the Utah Jazz at that point. I got to imagine Mark Harlan will make that phone call again.
He will be at the top of the list. Alex Jensen, he is the dream hire, given the fact that he's beloved as a player with what he accomplished here under Rick Majerus. Kevin Young at BYU, he sort of paved a path for coaches in that same sort of position. I think for Utah, this is an opportunity to potentially, hit a home run hire if you're able to bring him in. That will help kind of turn the vibes around with Utah basketball.
Catch Hans and Scotty weekdays from noon to 3 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. It's time to break down the biggest stories of the day. This is the top 3 stories of the day on KSLSports.com. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Want to remind you to nominate the youth sports volunteer for the Hercules Hero of the Week. Submit your nomination at KSLSports.com/contest and listen every Thursday afternoon to JJ and Alex for the winner. Help us celebrate the efforts of those volunteers making an impact with the Hercules Hero of the Week, sponsored by Hercules First Federal Credit Union and Beehive Meals. We're going to give out tickets coming up. A couple different events. We're going to have tickets to the Utah Hockey Club and tickets to RSL to give away a little later on in the show. So make sure you listen. Time for the top 3 stories of the day. KSLSports.com, brought to you by J. Brooks Jewelers. Cherish your love with J. Brooks Jewelers. Explore their expertly crafted engagement rings made from the finest materials. All right, Christian, where do you want to start?
Number 1, Walker Kessler had a historic game last night versus the Kings.
One of only 3 players in NBA history to have 25 points, 14 rebounds, and 5 assists and not miss a shot from the floor. Pretty incredible. Not that he's Wilt Chamberlain and Nikola Jokic, the 2 other players who have done it, and those guys, score in a different way than Walker does. Walker needs shots created for him, and those two other guys can create shots for themselves. But, man, there's a lot of centers that have played. There's been a lot of games played in NBA history. For that stat line to not be reached more than, I think it's 8 times now is the 8th time it's happened, but only 3 players have ever done it. It's pretty wild. And I think, Jake, with the future of the NBA, I mean, Jokic is going to be good for the next 3 or 4 years. You would think Wemby and Chet Holmgren would be coming up behind him, and who knows. But having a good center is going to be really important. And I think the Jazz have a really good center.
I do too. My favorite part of his game had nothing to do with stats.
Mm-hmm.
Had everything to do that his face was covered in blood at the end of the game.
Was it the elbow or a forehead from was it Keegan Murray? Whoever went up through his face. He caught it, and he stayed in the game and just kept playing.
If you watch him the whole game, he's catching elbows and all sorts of stuff the whole game. And, no offense to Kyle Filipowski, but that guy falls every time down the floor.
Correct.
Walker, you don't even notice.
Yeah.
Leaves the game covered in blood. It's like, oh, man, that guy figured out what you got to do to make it in the NBA as a big. Domantas Sabonis sucked last night. Now, I think part of that is the Kings have no idea how to play.
Yeah, they're really trying to figure it out
with their roster. And, I mean, Doug Christie's never really done it before. They have no idea what they're doing. And it's just basically a bunch of dribbling, which you'd predict with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan. Interesting, they've tried to take them off the ball by having Malik Monk be a point guard, which is kind of weird.
It's like having Jordan Clarkson be your point guard. It doesn't really work.
It doesn't work. And now they're kind of ignoring Sabonis. But whatever, it's still Sabonis. I mean, you're still going to have to go out there and be physical against the league's leading rebounder. And Walker was way better than Sabonis last night across the board.
Yeah. He's learning how to do everything that his body will allow him to.
Yep.
You've got to maximize what your physical gifts are when your physical gifts are what got you into the NBA in the first place. And he's a legit 7 feet tall, probably 265 pounds right now. We know he had great timing as a shot blocker. He didn't have any blocks last night. He changed the game without doing the thing that made him interesting coming out of college. It's assists that he never used to throw. It's rebounding in a way he never used to. And yeah, his touch around the rim is really good. He can finish lobs. He can get layups. He scoops around guys. He really is playing terrific basketball. And as you look at this rebuild and you're trying to find which pieces are keepers and who's going to be what, we're talking in the last segment about how important it is to have an identity. Walker might be good enough to start to craft an identity around, at least defensively. And that's a big starting point. Who you can go to start piecing players around is a hard thing to find, especially with a big guy. So to have him is a real luxury for the Jazz.
And then I'm kind of curious if Jordan Clarkson developed some temporary amnesia and forgot how to play basketball because he had a rough game.
You see guys have poor shooting nights and they just ball rims out.
Oh, this wasn't just shooting either.
Jordan was missing shots by 1.5 feet, like airballing multiple shots, getting shots blocked, which means he had forgotten his timing of how you get shots off as a 6'5" person in the NBA. He just kept getting swallowed up. And then weird turnovers, just getting getting ripped above the 3-point line. It was a game of a guy who looked like he hadn't played in 3 months. And I know he's in and out of the lineup with the foot injury, but that was a particularly difficult performance from Jordan.
And then on the break, when he actually was back, he'd just get out of the way. Yeah. It was not his night.
Not for me.
No, it was not his night. However, I am glad that he made that shot at the end. Well, not the end of the game, but in the fourth quarter. His last shot, because he would have gone down in the record books as the worst offer in Jazz history.
Oh, he got the layup, yeah.
But as of right now, it's still Derek Favors who went 0 for 13.
Oh, good for Favors.
So Jordan had tied the record, but then making the shot made it.
How did Derek Favors go 0 for 13?
I have no idea.
He's 6'9" and uber athletic and really strong.
Bad jump shooting night? I don't know.
Yeah, why was he shooting jump shots?
I have no idea.
I think KJ Barton was also very good. I thought KJ... No, he's a gap filler, right? KJ Martin catches lobs, hits open threes if he's wide open. He's not a guy who you're like, go to work, KJ, and you give him the ball. But those guys are valuable. Guys who you don't need to draw up shots for, who can contribute big nights every once in a while can have value. So I think considering the fact that the Jazz got him for essentially Drew Eubanks and Patty Mills, and a guy who has more upside than that and is only 24 years old and under team control next year is something to watch the rest of the year.
I do miss Cousin Drew.
Okay.
I
Played hard.
I thought it was a good nickname.
Yeah.
And he did play hard.
And KJ plays hard. I like that he plays hard too.
VHT didn't play yesterday.
He had a pretty rough outing 2 games ago.
He loves to shoot.
He does.
He is the second
I was like,
coming
okay,
of,
that's a gunner.
THT.
And it's okay to be a gunner when you're a shooter. Man, he's shooting whatever he wants, though. He's attacking the rim. He's going for layups, double and triple teamed.
It's the SV show.
It is. It really is.
All right, what's next?
Number 2, today is the day, fellas. February 27th, BYU football. They start spring practice today.
Already? Wow. We're back.
It's good. I'd want my team to practice in the cold.
It's still like 45 outside. It's not that bad.
Well, and they have an indoor practice facility. But if I were Kalani, I'd be hoping that it really snowed
We're going out.
so I could take my team outside to toughen them up.
Do you have any particular opinion on the growing trend of teams ditching spring games?
Yeah, I think it's sad. It sucks.
Yeah, I mean, spring
And
games are there for the fans.
the reason that we're losing spring game, it sucks. All of it.
Do you want to explain why we're losing them, or at least one of the theories?
Because they
why?
don't want to let their players show their stuff
Right.
because they don't want them to leave because they're going to get poached by other schools who are like, oh, we could use that.
Yeah, I can't watch practice, but I can turn on the Pac-12 network and watch the spring game.
Right.
That used to be the case.
So now their solution is, okay, I'm sorry. No, if we can't handle it, if we can't be adults, no spring games for anybody.
Spring football has been a brief reprieve recently because college basketball in our state has not been very good, but now college basketball is really good in our state, and it has caused me to lose interest in spring football, and I'm totally fine with it.
I don't think spring football has ever been interesting. The only thing interesting about spring football is the spring game.
Agreed, exactly right. You used to at least have something to look forward to, and they used to let people watch some practice. Very few teams let you watch much practice at all anymore.
Yeah, so I can see the 18-year-old who graduated early.
And that is the interesting part, is like some of these kids are getting on campus for the first time, and there's some hope, and someone's going to say they look good. Now, what I also don't believe is that anybody looks good in spring football.
No. Well, and the people that have solidified positions on the team don't really do it. I mean, kinda, but don't really do it. I don't know. I've never found spring ball all that interesting. Now it's really not interesting because you don't even know if these players are going to be on the team.
Agreed. I guess a couple things to watch, though. Does a backup quarterback emerge for BYU? You've got a starter. That's great. Who's the backup going to be?
Yeah, because Retzhoff was very healthy, but as we've seen, can't necessarily bet on that.
Usually the exception and not the rule. So if McKay Hillstead has to step in and play, can he? Or is it going to be somebody else?
Did they put him, McKay, that is, on one of those, the rack? Is that what they used to call it, the torture device? You know what I'm talking about? In the Middle Ages?
You're talking about the
one
Middle
that stretches
Ages.
you out?
Yeah.
Not Kyle Whittingham's The Rack, where like if you said you had a hamstring injury, he made you go and do
No, that's the
pull-ups.
pit.
The pit, yeah, but it had the... Yeah, anyway.
No.
Explain it. It's like a table, right? And they like crank it and it just
Stretches
pulls
people
you
out.
longer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They should do that to him.
Okay. So he's bigger?
He's only
What?
5'10".
Yeah, he's real small. If they could stretch him into a 6'2", that'd be helpful, right?
You got something. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Does it work?
Probably not.
No.
I doubt it.
All right. No, McKay Hillstead's really good. Part of me wishes he would have stayed at Utah State. I think he could have been a real guy for them. What's next?
Number 3, Ryan Smith was on Twitter teasing an outdoor hockey game. He said it is in motion.
I think the last time this was in response to Holly Rowe, who said like, it'd be cool to have what do they call the game? The outdoor NHL game? The Winter Classic?
Winter Classic.
And there had been rumors that it would be held up at Rice Eccles. It kind of was the first idea. And it's been in the ether for a little bit. And then, Holly talked about it, and Ryan said in motion. The last time Ryan teased something like that, I think Sam Farnsworth was like, we should bring an NHL team to Utah. And Ryan said, it's in motion. So I bet this happens.
See, but having it at Rice Eccles, wouldn't that be a huge missed opportunity? Shouldn't we do it at like Mirror Lake or something?
We're going up the canyon. You have to carry your own bags. It's a 35-minute walk in February.
What's the elevation in Mirror Lake?
I forgot my skates. I got to walk back. I'll be back.
I feel like that
in the car.
would grab some headlines.
It would be great.
Mountain Lake NHL game, 10,000 feet.
Well, huffing and puffing. There's no air up there.
It's putting tough hockey players to the test.
You have said that you think Ryan could benefit from throwing a bone or two to the University of Utah, a la Larry H. Miller.
I do.
Who always did a good job balancing BYU, Utah donations, et cetera, et cetera.
This could be
This is a good
yeah,
one. This is a good one.
Little olive branch, sure.
Posted it at Rice Eccles, which is kind of seems like where it would be. It's close to downtown. It's a big game. You know, the NHL has struggled to get a lot of attention. This is a game that always gets a lot of attention. That'd be very cool. I hope it happens.
Yeah, me too. And yeah, Ryan Smith has a tendency to make stuff happen. So,
Boys back in action tonight, the fellas. Taking on Minnesota.
come on, you like my Mirror Lake idea. It's got to be frozen over, right?
But do it at Antelope Island. Have buffalo going around. Bison.
I know, but there's not a frozen lake on Antelope Island.
We could make one. There's not a hockey rink currently at Rice Eccles Stadium either.
All right.
You want him to actually just play on a lake.
On a frozen lake.
You just want
legit
you
frozen
don't
lake.
want boards or anything.
No Zamboni.
Okay.
Nothing.
Like
Just like a lake.
hope it's cold. Some
It's
thin
always
spots.
it's at 10,000 feet. It's always cold.
Thin spots. Someone actually breaks through.
Like you couldn't even get the team bus up there, I don't think.
Yeah, probably not.
You're right. You'd have to hike in.
Or helicopter.
Oh, even better. All right, stay tuned. We'll have more next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
This is DJ and PK.
Jeff Judkins, former U player, former U assistant coach. If you're talking to any of these guys, would you recommend that they stay? Why would any of the guys give up a good thing they have going for the uncertainty that you're painting in the college basketball industry?
Because you love the University of Utah, and you love the challenge to see if you can return this program where it was. The hard part of the university job is not just getting the job and recruiting, it's winning, it's getting the fans back, it's getting Utah back on the map where they need to. It's dealing with the NIL money. That's tough to do. Once you have it, it's kind of easy. Once you have it, it's hard to lose it. There, when I was coaching, we were ranked in the top 10 for 8 or 9 straight years. If you walk in a gym, people knew who you were. Now you got to start over and try to get that, which I know it can be done.
Catch DJ and PK mornings from 6 to 10 on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Who's got it better than us?
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Jake Scott, Ben Anderson.
Did you kill the dog?
No, I am not a murderer.
Christian found a dead dog in his backyard yesterday.
I don't think you can be tried for murder for killing a dog. I think you
Well-
can go for animal abuse.
And so I found bones, and I'm assuming it was a dog. Because
Big
when
or
you
little?
say dead dog, like that's a little different than saying, I don't know how long these bones have been there. Like at that point, is it a dead dog
It's still
anymore?
dead. Yeah.
It once was a dog and is no longer.
Could have been a big cat.
Huge cat. Yeah, how big? What are we thinking?
So I just found the pelvis, and it was like 6 inches long. So
Okay.
not very big.
But a
like a
decent-sized
lap
dog.
Yeah.
You left the rest there, just the pelvis?
I didn't find the rest.
Oh.
I just found the pelvis.
Oh, interesting.
I could have done some more digging, but I didn't want to hit like a gas line or a sprinkler line or something.
I did a patio in my backyard last year, and there was a blanket full of bones underneath there. Not buried deep enough was my hot take. It's like 7 inches down, 6
That's
inches
what
down.
I found
Like, guys,
too. Yep.
2 feet for an animal. 6 feet for people, 2 feet for an animal.
Not human. The bones you found.
I hope not. It would have been a tiny person and weirdly shaped.
Join JJ and Alex coming up tomorrow from 3 to 6 at the 10th Annual Salt Lake Off-Road and Outdoor Expo at the Mountain America Expo Center. Check out cool stuff and get great deals while getting in some off-road land use. join JJ and Alex coming up tomorrow. Can I ask you a Snap Talk question?
Yeah, I saw a guy hit a goose one time with his car and walked out of his car, picked the goose. The goose was like clearly dying and like wandering around with a broken wing. It was really shocking to watch because there's blood and the goose is white. And it was just like having a hard time. And this guy walked up and just grabbed it by the neck and threw it off the side of the road. This was on like 11th East and 18th South. And he just like chucked the thing into the yard. And I was like, that's some tough people out there.
Oh, man.
This guy didn't care at all.
Oh, geese are the worst.
Yeah, I hate birds. I'm not a bird person, but yeah, this guy hit it, got out of his car, grabbed it, threw it off the side of the road, and got back in his car. I was like, there was definitely goose juice on your hands. Probably blood, but I don't know what it was.
Yeah, wipe it off when you get in.
Yeah, wipe it off on the seat.
Yeah, right. It'll be fine. Hey,
what
was everybody worked up about this parody account that got canceled yesterday?
NBA Centel?
It was all it's a take on the NBA Central account, right? Where
he's back now, by the way.
He's back?
It's a meme account. They do fake tweets. They make fun of NBA players.
Yeah, they duped Cowherd the other day, right? Because they said that Dallas would be forbidding Luka jerseys in their arena.
They had a big one saying Kim Kardashian was saying that she would have to learn Slovenian after Luka moved there, and everybody believed that one.
So, I want to know why they got bumped. What was the deal?
Do you want to know what the theory is?
Yeah.
Okay. So not my theory, but this is kind of the theory.
Okay.
They have been going extremely hard at the Dallas Mavericks post Luka trade.
Okay.
Really hard after Luka. Do you know who owns the Dallas Mavericks now?
The Adelsons.
Do you know who they are huge donors to? The Trump administration.
Yeah.
Do you know who else is in the Trump administration? The guy who owns Twitter.
Oh, Musk. So they're saying the Adelsons
There was some belief, the tinfoil hat is that the Adelsons have a direct line to Elon.
And they got him bumped.
We're able to get it at least quieted, muted, even though it's back now, because he was going too hard at the Mavericks as an organization.
Because even the Jazz sent out something about it, right?
Did they?
A lot of teams did yesterday, like in their victory or loss post.
They matter.
Hashtag RIP Centel.
Yeah, it's just a weird thing. It matters, I don't follow it. I probably muted it so I don't specifically get duped. So I didn't miss it that it was gone. But that's the theory I've been handed.
So I don't, sure, I could buy into that. Adelsons and all that matter. I suspected hurt feelings were at the heart of it. Which always baffles me. I just don't understand the hurt feelings out there. Like I don't understand. Like remember when what was that guy's name for RSL? Andy Carroll, was that his name? Who banned Gordon from covering the games because he didn't like a column that Gordon wrote. I don't understand the hurt feelings. Are you above it or not? Well, are you confident in you and what you do and all the things or not?
Here's the problem. How many of our listeners, give me a percentage of what you think our listeners had heard of the NBA Centel before right now.
Oh, like 10.
And now how many have heard? Everyone listening. Like, that's the problem. That is why all publicity is good publicity.
The Streisand effect or whatever?
We are talking about a thing that people didn't know about, and now there's all this info out about them. It's how you draw eyeballs to things. So this was a good thing for NBA Centel. I'm sure initially it was a little shocking to them. And they're not like... It's not Woj. They have 400,000 followers, which is a lot, but it's not crazy.
But this stuff never works, is your point.
Yes.
In fact, it usually backfires.
It does the exact opposite. And once they realize, I can get away with whatever, and you can't ban me, I'm going to go really crazy. So, anyways.
But yeah, I just assumed, okay, somebody had hurt feelings. Maybe Cowherd was embarrassed for getting duped. But it always makes me laugh. There was a local, and I won't say his name because I like him very much, and he's not currently broadcasting. But anyway, there was a parody account out about a local broadcaster around here, and he was so bent out of shape about it, and was like, I mean, this person could barely email, and was figuring out how to get directly in touch with Twitter HQ on how to get this parody account taken down. And it's like. Dude, not worth it.
Did you ever see the real Tom Nisolke on Twitter?
Yes, I remember that. That's not what I'm talking about.
But that was a funny one. R.I.P. Tom Nisolke.
I do remember that.
That was a good one.
But I just don't understand. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to silence some bozo on Twitter because he's being too hard on you for making, again, this all comes back to if it is about Dallas, which we have no idea, but it comes back to you made a controversial trade. If you didn't know it was going to be controversial before you made it, I don't know what planet you live on.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Of course, this was going to draw more attention to it. And anyways.
You made a bold, dramatic trade that you knew wasn't going to be popular.
Right. And you were going to get hammered for it.
No matter what.
Yeah. So if that is what happened here, again, pure speculation, but kind of what I had been told, it's not helping you.
Let's let's give away some tickets to the Utah Hockey Club. Caller number 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE. You're going to win a pair of tickets to go see the Utah Hockey Club take on the Minnesota Wild tonight at the Delta Center. So make sure you can go. Call 801-575-ZONE, caller 12 right now. Mike Smith joins us coming up next. Stay tuned. 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
What's that? Whether it's the Jazz, Utes, Cougars, or Aggies, these guys have got you covered.
Time to eat, fellas.
You're locked on to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson.
1, 2, 3, move it.
On 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jacob Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. We're going to talk to Mike Smith momentarily. We'll see. We'll get his thoughts on the Jazz. We can ask him about the NBA overall. We were talking before the show started. How about the Pistons, Ben? They may be the best story in the league this year. They beat Boston by 20 last night.
They're playing with a lot of momentum. I'm not going to pretend that I'm like super impressed with them. Because if you look at their rosters over the last couple of years, they've just had the worst teams in the NBA. Like, it's not like they were underachieving. They had bad rosters.
Yeah.
And I know everyone wanted to, like, hammer Tobias Harris for basically, was he the one that was picked over Jimmy Butler by the 76ers? Yeah. Like, okay, I get it. That's a bad look. That doesn't make Tobias Harris a bad player. We saw Malik Beasley. Malik Beasley's a good player. He's good here. Tim Hardaway Jr., same thing. It's like, some of these guys were miscast in roles where they needed to be the third best player on a championship team, and that's what people hoped they were getting. Like, yeah, Tim Hardaway wasn't that in Dallas. I don't know what to tell you. He's not that good. And Tobias Harris is not that good in Philly. But they're really good NBA players still, and so when you surround a former number 1 overall pick in Cade Cunningham with guys who actually know how to play basketball, you're going to get better results. So while I'm happy for him, I for whatever reason, outside of the Tigers, tend to like kind of Detroit sports teams, and I liked the Pistons in the early 2000s. I can't say like this is the most out-of-nowhere surprising team we've seen, other than the fact that they've just been such a disaster for so long.
I think that's it. I think it's all the bad decision-making, always, and being so terrible.
Yeah.
And honestly, it's not an all-star team. I mean, you make good points about how players maybe are better than we gave them credit for. I certainly buy into it with somebody like Tobias Harris. Just because they were overvalued at one point doesn't mean that they're terrible.
Or overpaid or whatever, yeah.
But, I mean, Jalen Duren has been just okay. He's been all right. I mean, along with those role players that you're mentioning, I mean, it's not one of the better rosters in the East still.
No, they don't have like a clear breakout number 2 guy, to your point. And they're in real contention to end up with home court advantage in the first round.
Which is also a comment on the East is not great.
But like they shouldn't have any business competing with the Milwaukee Bucks.
No.
Milwaukee has 2 Hall of Famers on it, 2 All-Stars on it, one of the 5 best players in the world on it. So that's a credit to, what J.B. Bickerstaff has done, which he's great at this. Everywhere J.B. Bickerstaff has gone, he's done this. He takes trash teams and makes them good teams, and then seems to not be able to get them over the hump, so he gets fired. That's what he did in Cleveland, and Cleveland looks better for it. But he has kind of historically been able to do this. I feel like he did it in Memphis as well.
You brought up Cleveland. Did you hear Joe Ingles this morning?
No, what did he say?
At all? While we're kind of waiting to see if Mike Smith's going to join us. But he was talking about Donovan Mitchell because they asked him if he still talks to all those old Jazz guys. And he said, yeah, he talked to Donovan Mitchell, and he and Mike Conley, and you can go back and listen, but Joe's like, he and Mike we're talking to Donovan about how he's doing the stuff they were telling him to do back with the Jazz. And then Joe says, you look at it and his points are way down, but his efficiency is way up. And he has these assists and his assist numbers are way up. And then Joe goes, so I go, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. That would be something different for Cleveland. Like you're getting a different, more team-oriented Donovan Mitchell. But then Joe says, now don't get me wrong, he's still going to take the last shot.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe himself added that, and it's like, well, that's the problem, actually, that he's going to, I think Joe said, have the ball at the end or something like that. And it's like, well, you just described a guy, who's learned and evolved, and then you get to the actual problem. And we watched it so often with the Jazz where at the end of the fourth quarter, Donovan had the ball, and the Jazz would lose because he's easy to stop at the end when he's going to have the ball. Just don't understand that.
And in the playoffs, nobody wins every game by 15 points.
Right.
So it will matter.
Joining us now, you see him on KJazz, Jazz Plus, SDG Plus. He's nice enough to join us on Thursdays. He's our buddy, Mike Smith. What's going on, Mike?
Jake and Ben, how are you guys? Good morning. What a beautiful Utah February day. Holy cow.
Been pretty nice. Excited to spend some time outside in the coming weeks. But regardless, we watched two really nice performances over the last two games from Jazz big guys. And the skills of Walker Kessler. Mike, you were quite a skilled big man. We're starting to see the skills of Walker Kessler come out a little bit more. What I mean by that, 5 assists last night. Seems like his reads are really good. Finding guys like KJ Martin cutting to the basket for dunks. I've been impressed with that development in Walker's game.
Me too, and I hope it continues, Ben, because I've grown tired of seeing Walker not look at the basket. And this is not Mike complaining. This is just Mike visualizing the future, right, of what he can be. So last night there were a couple of instances where he set the screen up top and rolled, caught the ball in the middle like what you're referring to, and then delivered beautiful passes, like to the corner for a three or a lob to KJ Martin, who darts so well. He's got great instincts darting from the corner to the rim. But Walker's got much more. He does. I don't know that he's ever going to be, Nikola Jokic with that smooth three-point stroke. But I watch him before the games, and he can shoot, threes at a really good rate. Nobody on him, but still going through the repetitions, like I'd say 6 to 7 out of 10 unguarded, which is a huge step forward. You'd never think he could do that given the way he shoots free throws. But just everything he's doing has been such a great, let's say, rebound from last year. And I actually had him before the ball game yesterday, not on TV, but just sitting on the bench and started chatting. And, we started talking about his girlfriend, Miss America, to, why the surge this year. And he said, not only physically am I more ready to compete. In other words, he gave credit to his consistent workouts throughout the summer and no breaks. And he and I shared a little moment. I said, there were 2 times in my life when I played on a Team USA. The first one was before my freshman year in college. I was on a U18 or a U20 World Championship United States team and showed up to my freshman year so out of shape because we were in Spain and 2-week tournament and playing games, but no practice time and the travel. And, I showed up for my freshman year. I was winded on every. And he could relate, and he was like, same thing happened to me last year. I did all that time with Team USA. I couldn't focus on my own lifting and my own strength building and my workouts. So he said, that is the foundation of this year. And then he said something interesting. He said, I've also worked just as hard on my mental approach to every game. And I thought that was super cool. So he talked about his focus. He talked about his preparation. He talked about, visualizing how he's going to guard certain people. And that kind of just shows you what's inside this guy, not just the footwork and the skill and the soft touch, and, of course, the shot-blocking presence and the rebounding dominance of late. But, that's a guy you invest in. That's a guy you say, okay, he's not only willing to put in the physical work, but, mentally he's there. He wants to get better. He wants to train his mind to be great, which gives me hope from him offensively and at the line. And I'm still waiting, both you guys, and Will Hardy promised me this would happen. as Will and I have talked about this, that one time before the year's end, Walker will fake a handoff on a screen, like get a pass, kick it back to Keontae or Isaiah, fake it, wheel, one dribble, and go to the rim and throw down so hard on somebody. So I've been told that it's happened 2 or 3 times at practice, not weekly, but like 3 times total, and everyone is shocked. And so you'll see me jump for joy when that happens the one time this year in the final, whatever we have, 24, 25 games. But he's been great.
Sticking on Walker for a second, Mike, you were known for your prowess at the free throw line. I think that's the number one thing he needs to fix. That needs to be his project this offseason. So what would you tell him to get him to a manageable percentage from the line?
I'm still mad, Jake, because my junior year I shot like 84%, and I don't know what happened that year. That's the year I scored the best, played the best, and I can't figure it out because my sophomore year 91, my senior year 93, but my junior 84 was just like, I think I'm 11 free throws shy in my college career of shooting 50, 40, 90 for the whole career for 4 years. Those stupid 11 free throws my junior year, and I don't have anyone to blame but myself. But you're right. Free throws is the one part, the one aspect of the game of basketball that can be exactly the same in practice as it can in the game. Yes, critics might say, well, you had the element of pressure. Yes, you had the element of, time, score, and, magnitude of the moment and fatigue. And I would take the fatigue out of it because you can practice free throws tired. But it's the one part of the game where they can't guard you. It doesn't change. The rim's 10 feet. The baskets are all the same. They're all calibrated. You're 15 feet away. Every free throw line has a dot, like a punch hole right there in the center of the line, which marks the center of the rim. I still see players, pro, college, and youth, who do not line up their right toe or their right shoulder on that line if they're a right-handed shooter. They'll straddle that line and think they're in the center. So that line, that dot, which every hoop has and every NBA court has, if you can visualize this, is then as they line up and straddle it perfectly in between both their feet, is now in their nose or in their sternum as you go up that vertical line. But nobody shoots the ball from their nose or their sternum. Right? Your shoulder sits to the right of your sternum and your nose, and that's where your release point is. If you watch a Steph Curry, the first thing he does is he holds the ball on his left side without a dribble and lines his toe up on that line, which means he lines up his shoulder, his right elbow, his right wrist, everything in the center of the rim, now right on that line. So I teach my little 7th graders things like that. But it's repetition. Like, you got to believe, and the mind can achieve way more than you think it can if you train it to do so. Like college years and pro years, for me, I would not leave the gym until I'd made 30 free throws in a row and 15 threes in a row. So imagine that. Imagine that, like, task every day. I started small, like 10 free throws and 5 threes. Then I went to 15 free throws and 7 threes, and I built it up to 30 and 15. So you had to make those 45 shots in a row before you could leave. And some days I did it on the first try, some days on the second try, many times within the first 3 tries. But there was a day or two when it took me 10 tries. That's like 2 hours. But the act of, like, repeating it over and over again trains your mind that, to make a free throw in a game is a nothing burger, right? Like, I've made whatever you build it up to. Walker could start with 10 free throws and build it up to 20 before he leaves practice every day. But I do think there's something technically not great about his free throw shooting. That's not for me to correct so much, but he's a wrist shooter. Like, he puts it up high, and then it's a wrist motion forward and a forearm motion forward. Whereas I believe the greatest shooters, once the ball is in the shot pocket, their elbow will go completely vertical as they push up with their tricep and their shoulder, and the elbow would replace the exact spot where their wrist is. And so that's an arm shooter. and then you let the wrist just kind of release naturally. And that's a lot of technicality, but that's Steph, that's Dame, that's some of the great shooters of our day can just repeat that motion time and time again. And I think in a Walker motion where the ball is almost stagnant up top and then a wrist and a forearm move forward, there's too many variables that way. You don't train it to shoot straight as well, and you're going to have lots of variances, long and short, in my opinion.
One guy who's become a great shooter over the last 21 games is Kyle Filipowski. 55% from the floor, 50% from three on 2.5 threes a game, 5 rebounds, 8.7 points. I've been impressed. I think he certainly already outperformed his draft position. What do you make of what his future looks like? Like what's an ideal role for him?
That's a great line. That's a great line, Ben. I may use it and steal it, and if I do, I'm giving you credit. He's outperformed his draft position. That's so good. It's really true. I watched him play the first month of the season and gave him the nickname Philip a stat sheet because he's so multi-skilled, right? He handles pressure. He handles height. He handles strength. He doesn't panic. Like I wish I had guys like that on my little 7th and 8th grade teams when teams pressure because he's going to just find a way. And so the 3-point shooting of late has been an added bonus. He didn't shoot it great early on, but clearly he's working on it, and it's a good form. It's a good stroke. It's a confident release. If he can become that kind of great shooter from three, look out. He's not a center, obviously. He was big in college, but he could play any of the up front spots, and he's kind of like a plug-and-play. So in the world of Jazz future, if they were to get a certain draft pick from Duke, who is also a plug-and-play, you could play him anywhere in the front line, and Lowry's kind of a plug-and-play. Kyle fits in beautifully. Like they could have a positionless front court of 6'9", 6'10", 7 feet that are like pretty tough to guard because it's hard to put 3 big defenders out there who can guard all those spots. But I love that Kyle can play inside, outside. He's the perfect guy if a team ever tries to zone the Jazz to be a high screen roll guy, roll to the foul line, receive a little bounce pass from Collier or George, and be that, free throw line, catch the ball playmaker from there. So as he learns like floaters and little shots in there, his ability to distribute and see the floor from there are fantastic. I'm a big fan and think he has a really good upside.
Minnesota's in town tomorrow. Not sure if we're going to see Rudy, but I'm curious to your take on the Timberwolves and their ability to compete in the West, because I do think the West is wide open, but I don't think the Timberwolves are one of the teams I'm considering.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And last year, a lot of people had really, really high hopes on them. And did they get to the conference finals last year before bowing to Dallas?
They did.
I think they did, yeah. I don't know. I'm like a huge Ant-Man fan, so I love his game. I love his athleticism, his mid-game, his long game, his 3-tier scoring ability. I love his competitiveness, all that. I've always liked Mike Conley. He's on the, last turn of his career. Not sure how much, he gets you over the hump in close games, but he's solid, and he's such a good guy. He's easy to love. I've never been a fan of Rudy. And that's just me. I don't know why. It doesn't mean Rudy's not great at what he does. It doesn't mean Rudy's not better than he used to be. The last time the Jazz played Rudy punished the Jazz inside. And I was, myself like, dang, this guy's better than I think he is. But I've never been a fan that, I don't know, his liabilities get you over the hump and all the way to a finals and win a championship. But he has his merits. I do like Naz Reid a lot. I think you put that guy in a one-on-one competition, and he probably makes it to the final 10 of the NBA. He's just a really unique player with shooting and ball handling and scoring and size and quickness. So he's like a really good, piece for them. And Julius Randle, yeah, he's good. He's okay. I just don't think he's a winning ball player that gets you to the top. So, I don't know. It sounds like I'm cynical and I'm not a Minnesota fan. I do like the coach, but I don't see them getting to the conference finals again.
Quickly, one more player I want to ask you about is KJ Martin, who had a breakout last night, but has been a good player at his stops, but he's a weird guy you don't call plays for, so I don't think he's going to give you the same production night in and night out. He kind of just fills the gaps, but I think you saw his value last night.
I think you're right, and there's a place in the NBA for guys for whom you don't call plays, right? That's an added thing. That's a Will Hardy, arrow in his quiver. I like having those kind of guys if they don't have liabilities in any area, and I don't think he does, right? Like, you can put him out there, he can guard a 2, he can guard a 3, he's going to run the floor, he's going to flourish in the open court, and if you have an Isaiah Collier on the floor, he's going to go full speed, 120 miles an hour, then why not have an athletic wing who can catch up to him and finish and be there? And those little darts from the baseline were terrific. From the corner, I think he had 2 of them last night, one from Walker for sure. I don't remember who the other was from, but both finished at the rim. And you can see when he finishes, it's just an effortless jump off 2 feet. It's like he's on a pogo stick. Kind of fun to watch. So I like players like that. In my youth, and I don't mean high school days, youth days, but let's say my young NBA days, because the NBA 30 years ago, the NBA I played in, was so full of skilled players, and I think more skilled in every way than players today. In other words, they could all shoot, they could all pass, and mostly wings I'm referring to, 3s and 2s. I never saw the value of guys like that back then. I just didn't, and maybe because I wasn't that player. I wasn't the athletic wing that could, go score and go find a way to get 10 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, kind of like what KJ did last night. I think he had 14, 5, and 4 without a play called for him. I didn't see the value in those guys, but I do now. So, as I put my general manager glasses on or my coach glasses on, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a valuable piece. So it's a small sample. He's only been here a little bit, but he's been pretty good. And it's a nice aggregate to what you're trying to build, right? Like, not everybody has to possess the same skills. And so he possesses different things, which I admire.
Mike, we appreciate you, buddy. Thank you very much, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
What do we got tonight? Little 5A and 6A high school basketball championships?
Yeah, you going to check it out? Watch your boy Alema and Coach Lacombe?
Yeah, I think I'll go there and check some of those guys out. I'm rooting for Olympus High School to win another championship. I think they've won 4 in the last 8 or 9 years.
No,
and
that's unfortunate.
Probably a surprise to be in the 5A final after beating Timpview. But my brother-in-law is the assistant coach. Matt Barnes, the head coach, is a legend. He was a former Aggie and a good friend, so I'm rooting for them tonight.
I'm not. I hope Olympus loses every game.
What?
What do you mean,
What's wrong
what?
with you?
I went to Skyline. I don't cheer for Olympus.
Are they playing Skyline?
It doesn't matter.
Skyline cannot be there.
No, Skyline's not.
No, of course not. Skyline.
Skyline basketball?
Yeah, the next good Skyline basketball team will be the first. It still doesn't mean that I cheer for Olympus.
Jake, since Danny Raines, has Skyline had a team?
No, never. That doesn't matter.
But Danny Raines was good, boy.
Oh, yeah, he was really good. Thank you, Mike. Be well, buddy.
Okay, see you guys.
The one and only Mike Smith. Mike just doesn't get it. What? I mean, I guess he is a Laker fan that played for the Celtics, so.
Yeah, that's true.
But he's a BYU guy. Does he cheer for the Utes ever?
Probably not.
Yeah. All right, stay tuned. We'll have more coming up next. Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Hey, bro. You hear us every day with our crazy opinions.
Hey, what you doing?
Well, now it's time to hear from you.
Hey, great show.
Download the KSL Sports app and fire off your thoughts with the call-in tab on the bottom of your screen.
Your show is fantastic. It's the one that captivates me the most.
You can tell PK to stop singing.
G-Bang!
Let Jake and Ben know what you really think of the Jazz.
Woo!
Tell Hans and Scotty about your favorite barbecue spot or what color of tie JJ should be wearing on TV. The best entries will be played on the air. Download the KSL Sports app now and hit the call-in button to let your voice be heard.
I think you guys do an incredible job.
This is 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. The sports you love, the teams you can't live without.
Get a sense of urgency!
This is Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone. Let's give away some tickets. It's the RSL ticket giveaway. Caller number 12 right now, 801-575-ZONE. You're going to get a 4-pack of tickets to go see RSL take on Seattle this Saturday at America First Field in Sandy. Hey, Ben, real quick, did you see that Anthony Davis, I'm curious, Anthony Davis says he's not buying it, that nobody knew anything about the trade before it happened.
Okay.
I'll try and do my best with this quote. Let's see. He starts out by saying, the front office is going to do whatever. But then he says, quote, I don't know what's true or what's not coming from upstairs. So my thing is, I'm going to go to my counterpart, talking about LeBron, who I've been running with, and see what's going on, get his reaction. And that's all it was. We had a conversation. That was it. Everybody's saying nobody knew and all this other
stuff.
I just don't believe it. But hey, man, I'm past that. I'm ready to move on with Dallas, try to get a championship with these guys, blah, blah, blah. But he's saying he's not buying it. That he called LeBron. LeBron gave him the song and dance nobody knows, and AD's not buying it. You know what's funny? I am buying it.
Okay.
Anthony Davis, maybe LeBron's just a dreadful liar. You know, he's like, hey, LeBron, did you guys know anything about this?
I don't know.
I tend to believe Rich Paul when he said, if I would have known about it, this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I think that's the, not smoking gun, but if there was a sign that was true, it would be Rich Paul saying, hey, I would have stopped this if I knew.
Now, he could be lying about that because Anthony Davis is also his client. But he's not making more money by having Anthony Davis not in L.A.
No, and Luka being there overshadowing LeBron isn't necessarily great for him either.
I don't think so either. So Anthony Davis, I guess, is suspicious, but I actually believe the Clutch crew. I believe Adele when she says, I had no idea.
The idea that it was Nico, Rob Pelinka, and then a couple of people above them, the owners of the teams that knew. I suspect it was slightly larger than that, and we have had kind of conflicting reports, whereas Nico had said, I only talked to the Lakers, and now there are people in Minnesota and Milwaukee who have said no. They offered him for Ant. They offered him for Giannis. At least there was kind of floating the idea that that might have been available. Clearly, there had been some talk. And it would have been really moronic and reckless of Nico to just say, hey, we only want Anthony Davis. Giannis is better than Anthony Davis. So you would have called on Giannis, and he's younger, and, there probably would have been some reason for Milwaukee to do that. And I would have been curious about Ant as well, whether he ends up being a better player than Anthony Davis, I don't know. But I have a hard time imagining Nico Harrison, even if he is very bad at his job, was bad enough to not say, let's see if there's better players that are available. So along those lines, I agree with you. I think there probably are more people. But yeah, it may have not gotten that far if Clutch didn't figure out. Because Clutch knows everything.
Right.
So.
And is all sorts of into arm twisting. So at very least would have slowed down the process, I would guess. But yeah, you know what I do believe? I do believe that Dallas does not like Luka. They do not like his habits. They think there's red flags there. Probably don't like the way he is using his influence, all those things. I would buy that Dallas was motivated to move off Luka because he's not a good long-term bet, in their opinion. Now, whether or not that proves to be right, I don't know. But I believe the hookah and beer stuff.
Yeah, hookah Doncic.
I think it's about more than that. And they're being salacious by throwing that out there to kind of CYA. But I do believe that. I believe they looked at that guy and said, you know what? Long term, this isn't it because he's too much. We're tired of playing the Eastern European trance music all the time. We're tired of this guy having the ball the whole time, being inconsistent, being insubordinate. We're going to move off him. I believe that part.
Nico also may be a bit of a fall guy for the Adelsons who may have said, we're not paying him $345 million. We're just not going to pay him a Supermax contract. And we don't want to pay anybody that much money. And you're going to have to be the guy who falls on it because you work for us and you make money and this is your opportunity to trade him. Otherwise, you're going to be gone because we're not going to pay him regardless. So do this for us. We certainly don't know the full story still. As much as Nico has come out and fallen on the sword, we don't know if it was his mandate or his idea. He has talked about why, and you're right, there's been all the salacious details that have leaked, but he still may be the messenger for somebody else.
Yeah, I don't know. I do not believe wholeheartedly in his intelligence.
Nico?
So,
yeah.
No.
I'm not sure either.
All his stuff where he's surprised and all this.
Yeah.
That is really weird. And the fact that he didn't know Steph Curry's name is not a good sign.
What I'm really curious about going forward is how well does Luka handle the Los Angeles aspect of all of this? Because one of the things I think I've really found and didn't maybe realize as closely as I should have just covering the league is like Luka loved Dallas. He loved the Dallas thing. He liked, I think, how well he fit into the shadow of Dirk Nowitzki. Like that role for the European superstar to come over and be a little bit unique. And you can hide in Dallas in a way you can't in LA or New York. It's a big market. There's a lot of people, but it doesn't necessarily mean there's eyeballs on you all the time. And, you even have a team like the Cowboys that shield you from some criticism. So you go to LA and all of a sudden that is gone. And there's this expectation for you to be X, Y, and Z where, Luka's going to be compared now for the rest of his life to LeBron, to Kobe, to Shaq, to Magic, to Kareem, etc. In Dallas, all he was ever going to get compared to was Dirk. And that's easy. That's not a bad thing. So I wonder if he never falls in love with LA the way he did Dallas, and then what type of effort you get out of him if that's the case.
Man, I thought about your question totally differently than where you answer. I thought like the LA lifestyle, I think is going to be terrible for him.
No, I think that's also true.
It's actually not about the spotlight and the amount of attention. It's actually the lack of attention. Because a lot of that behavior in LA is ignored and forgiven because it's
everyone's doing it
everywhere.
Yeah.
Lamar Odom was able to be a full-blown, and I say this with all due respect, crack addict.
Who was on crack? Yeah.
In LA.
Yeah.
Because you see people behaving badly everywhere, and it's not necessarily news.
There's parties to go to. There's
right.
There's places to be. You're so close to Vegas.
Do you know how much healthy food there is in LA? Too much for Luka.
You think?
I wonder how you know what, 25 have the world by the tail, and now you're in the world's biggest, seediest party city?
That could be also. There are pitfalls. Again, there really are some pitfalls for Luka out
There's
there.
a lot of hookah bars in LA.
There's a lot of hookah.
A lot of hookah.
It felt out of touch to me to complain about a guy smoking hookah.
Why? Because there are so many hookah smokers out there?
Well,
Kevin Durant made a strong push for the NBA to they've just stopped testing for weed, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, they don't test for weed anymore. Hookah is like I'm not a tobacco user. Hookah is like the most recreational, non-habit forming like
version. Is that true? I have no idea.
In the world, right? Like,
is it?
I've only seen hookahs at there's like hookah bars. You know what I mean? It's not like Luka brings this huge device to the game with him and is smoking hookah at halftime, right? That's not how hookahs work. It's like a whole presentation. It's almost ceremonial. So the idea that keeps getting brought up is very funny to me.
I actually have no problem with players partying, as much as this is fun to joke about. I don't care about the hookah. I don't care about the vodka or the beer or whatever they're throwing out there. Discipline, I would care about.
Yes, discipline I would care about.
Like, there's been NBA players who have been partiers for generations, but that show up and have the discipline. I mean, you say what you will about Dennis Rodman. The guy was disciplined to the point where he would come and play his face off no matter what. Well, maybe not no matter what, but I think you get my point. The discipline part, the insubordination is the issue that I'd have. Like if the rumors are true that they sent him to fat camp for 10 days and he came back heavier. Well, that's being insubordinate. That's not.
Do people know Bojan Bogdanovic smoked cigarettes? Is that like a well-known thing that Bojan was a smoker? It's like
a lot of Eastern Europeans are.
Well, there's NBA players that just smoke. They just do. You know, and you're right. I mean, Kevin Durant's been very clear about it. Like he's always smoking weed. He's stoned all the time. That's a lot of players. And I'm not. I don't know who. To be honest with you, I just know it's very common in the NBA. But like the idea that Luka is the only player who smokes,
right,
is crazy. And then like again to the point of like Bojan smoking after a game or before a game or during a game, whatever. I don't know how often he was smoking, but I know he was a smoker. Like. That's why the hookah thing is funny because you're not smoking hookah in your car on the way to the game. You know what I mean? It's this huge pipe with all these hoses. Like, I would be more concerned if he was vaping, honestly, or smoking cigarettes. And even that, he's far from the only player.
No, the problem is, do you want to win? Does he want to win? Does he want to do what it takes to win? And those are all things that maybe not. If you don't have the discipline if you prioritize other things, that's the red flag.
Yeah.
He would not be the first NBA player that liked to go out and party on the road or that smoked or any of that stuff. Like it's a part of the lifestyle. They're young people. It's what a lot of young people do, but it's the discipline. Do you have what it takes to, I guess, compartmentalize your life, for lack of a better term, to make sure that you give it all on the basketball court? And I would argue his style of play sends the signal that he doesn't necessarily want to win.
The funny thing is, all that is moot when they just went to the finals.
It is.
And that was a roster that nobody thought they should have been there in the first place anyways.
All the evidence is to the contrary that he can't win. Now, you know, if you're betting against him ever winning a title, a lot of guys don't win titles. A lot of great players never win titles. And is that going to be the reason you don't pay him? I don't know.
But that was part of Dallas's thought, though, in trading him, right? Was that they ran up against Boston, who was equipped to limit Luka and take him out of the series, and they didn't have any other answer because that's the way they play is watch Luka play. And they didn't have what did Dwayne Wade say about the Jazz back in the day? They don't have another gear.
There's no other gear. Yeah.
There's no other gear. Well, what was the Rockets' problem? There was no other gear when James Harden was just the one playing the whole time.
Yeah.
And then you thought, we got to get another gear in here. Let's try Dwight Howard or Rusty Westbrook or Chris Paul or whatever. And it's like, well, if the guy with the ball doesn't care about your other gear, then how does that work? You know, if you're going to live and die by Luka dribbling, well, when Jaylen Brown stops him from dribbling and you've got nothing else, I don't blame a team for adjusting like that. The thing with Dallas is to maybe not get the most value you possibly could, but just be surprised by the controversy. Yeah, your fans are going to hate you for a while.
Yeah.
Until it works or they see it or Luka washes out or whatever.
Yeah.
But of course they're going to hate it. I mean, we always compare, like if the Jazz would have traded Karl Malone in 1991.
Yeah.
Or even later, I guess, depending on what you want to look at.
Whenever,
Karl Malone's like heyday. They traded him in the middle of his prime or at the beginning of his prime or whatever. People would have been really upset.
People are still upset about Rudy and Donovan, you know, and they didn't get close to the type of success that Luka had or meant individually, you know.
So if you're going to make a move like that, then you got to be prepared. And if you're not prepared, then I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah,
if you're so sensitive you're getting Twitter accounts buttoned up, well, then that's pretty wild to me that you would make a decision like that.
That is the piece that is most surprising is that they seem caught off guard by the blowback. What do you mean? He's the third best player in the world. He just went to the finals. He's beloved in that town. Your best player in franchise history loves him, has taken him under his wing. It was a perfect transition from Dirk into Luka. So to not have the foresight that people were going to be grumpy about that, sports fans would turn their back on you is crazy.
It's like the executive that came up with the idea of New Coke. It's like, wow, people really hate me.
You like the
I'm
original
surprised.
Coke? You like the original that was the best-selling drink in the world?
Best-selling beverage of all time?
Huh.
Wow.
Anyways, Lakers-Timberwolves tonight. Should be a good game. Luka v. Anthony Edwards.
Locke was saying that this is the worst back-to-back in the NBA. The late game on the West Coast and then going to high elevation, Utah or Denver. Yeah. Which I could buy into.
For sure.
All right, stay tuned. We're wrapping up the show next, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I present...
This is JJ and Alex.
You know something's brewing down in Provo. Utah's having to deal with it because if you're a Utah fan and you're watching what BYU's doing, you're saying, that's what we should be doing. And we're not. How are they getting A.J. DeBonsa? How did they get Yegor Demon? How is BYU beating Arizona and Tucson? Utah fan wakes up this morning and BYU's in the top 25. And BYU is good enough to go down to Tucson and score 96 in their house. And if you're a Utah fan today, you see that. You see BYU's getting A.J. DeBonsa, and they're getting lottery picks. That used to be you. You used to get the Andre Millers and the Keith Van Horns, and the Jakob Pertles and the DeLon Wrights and the Kyle Kuzmas, and it's not anymore. And you wake up to this headline, you're like, okay, it looks like somebody up there finally gets it. Like, this is not acceptable.
Catch JJ and Alex afternoons from 3 to 6. Presented by G2G Bars on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Your home for the best sports coverage in Utah. You're listening to Jake Scott and Ben Anderson on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Two amigos on the airwaves, talking sports. They got him made Jakes and also loves his tie-dye. Ben's got style with his scarf. Oh my.
Vlade Divac smoked cigarettes in the locker room.
That was Taylor talking about what Ben and Vlade Divac have in common.
Yeah, Jazz got mad at me, and I just said, look.
They told me to knock it off.
If you want my coverage, you got to put up with it. Sorry, Bryce Sensabaugh. You're not pregnant. What do you care?
Again, yeah. There was the Luka hookah thing. I watched Karilla Facinko chain smoke like a pack of smokes at a bar one night when you could actually smoke in bars.
Yeah.
Which seems like millions of years ago now.
Yeah, it's to your point. There are a lot of smokers.
It's just a lot of like.
Not advertising it.
Young people make bad decisions.
Sure, it's easier to play basketball when you don't smoke cigarettes.
Right, but people do.
And again, to the point where hookah is not a cigarette. It's a totally different device.
But at this point, we're just splitting hairs.
Correct.
But I don't think Dallas, the Mavericks, are clutching pearls because a player likes to party, because I think that's really common.
I would think so, too. I think they are pointing at things that are easy to see, and you can see his weight on the court, and they're going to be like, that's to blame, and there's more behind the scenes, like being a terrible teammate.
Right. Again, if you say, hey, take a couple weeks, we need you to come back 10 pounds lighter. If Nate said to you, Ben, you're going to take a couple weeks, and you're going to come back
whatever
with better grammar.
Yeah, more prepared.
And you actually came back
less prepared,
and it had obviously been doing nothing.
What would it do for you?
Like
everybody else in the building. Yeah.
Right.
How do you establish, okay, we actually hold people accountable?
I could see why that makes people mad.
Absolutely, of course.
Now, star treatment is star treatment, and stars get away with everything in the NBA. That is a true fact. But teams have got to figure that out. Where do you draw the line? What's your limit? The Jazz were headed down that road with Donovan Mitchell. They fired their whole training staff because of it.
Yeah, there aren't perfect players. Nobody liked Kareem. Magic clearly liked to party. You know, Magic was a partier, a big-time partier. Larry partied. Larry Bird notoriously was a huge beer drinker. And in fact, said he didn't start winning games at the real level until he stopped drinking beer. So, do I think Larry never had a beer on the weekends? No, I don't. I think he kept drinking. But I just don't know if he was drinking every game.
What's the Wade Boggs thing that the Always Sunny people tried to do?
70 beers on a plane?
That can't
Something
be true.
Like that?
There's no way that's
from L.A. to New York? And that might even be the conservative number. I can't remember what the number was.
Stay tuned. I honestly don't think one person, maybe Andre the Giant, could drink 70 beers, but there's no way that that's true. This segment brought to you by Peach Doors and Windows. Amazing home transformations begin with Peach, where 5-star reviews are the norm. Call them today for your free in-home estimate, 801-566-1255. Peach Doors and Windows.
107 beers.
Yeah, there's not a chance. Hanson, Scotty G are coming up next.
Thanks, Christian.
Jake and Ben, 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.